Today we're installing CCTV for a customer on a new build estate, and I'm going to show you how to install cameras like a pro. Let's get into it. It can be a while in between us quoting for a job and then coming to install, so it's important that we check with the customer exactly where they want the cameras installing. In this case we've got 4 here today. One's going here. Second camera's going here. Third camera's going here. Fourth camera's going here. The CCTV we're installing today isn't wireless, and traditionally wired cameras used to be clipped all the way around the outside of a house until they got back to exactly where the recorder's going. But we're not going to do that. We're going to use a technique where we drop the cables down the cavity and hide everything, so it looks as if the cameras were there when the house was built.
You see, traditionally, houses have always been built using 2 layers of brick. You have an outside skin and an inside skin. I think this method was adopted around the 50s to help with damp, but I'm not a builder, so I don't really know. But what I do know is, it leaves us a gap in the middle of those bricks, which is called a cavity. This cavity is usually about 100mm wide, and so long as it isn't obstructed by thick insulation or other obstacles like cavity trays, we can usually drill in and rod into the loft. I'll show you how in a bit more detail. What I'm going to do first is measure off this wall so that I'm confident I'm drilling into the right place in the loft. Then mark it and start drilling. I start drilling square onto the wall and then bring the drill bit down so that it eats away through the brick until I'm basically vertical. Once I'm through, I'll chuck some rods up just to make sure there's no blockages, and we're all good. Then it's a case of feeding up the other set of rods just carefully until we reach into the loft, taping some cable on and heading up into the loft to try and find that rod. In this case we were right in the corner of the loft. Once I found the rod and dug it out, just pull it and bring it back to where the recorder's going.
As you can see, this is a gable end of a property. Now usually gable ends are bricked all the way up to the peak, but on this particular one there's a wooden structure behind it. So we've cut out a hatch around that, and I'm going to try and cavity drill and hopefully it'll pop out in the loft. Bingo. So now it's just a case of rinse and repeat. Drill the holes, rod the cables into the loft, fish it through the insulation and run it back to the recorder. The cable we're using on today's install is Cat 5E external grade or duct grade cabling. There's a bit of a debate about at the moment as to whether we should start using Cat 6, but these cameras don't run at anywhere near the speed required for Cat 6, and Cat 6 is more expensive, so it just seems a little bit unnecessary. The worst part about installing CCTV has always been getting internet to it. A lot of people will use the plug-in extenders, but we found them a bit flaky, and if your customer's using an app then it'll drop off and on and off and on. What we found is the most reliable way is to hardwire the recorder back to the router. Now if the router's in the middle of the house, that's really difficult, but luckily for us on this install the router is just by the front door. So what we've done is we've drilled a hole through to the under the stairs which connects to the router, and then the cable will sit underneath all these stones and then clip up the back of the drain pipe. And that means we can get it hardwired back to the router. Top tip for when you're doing it this way, keep a little bit of red tape on the cable that goes to the internet, so when you come to terminate you don't plug it into the wrong port. Now that we've first fixed all of our cabling, it's time to start getting some cameras mounted. I'll start off by terminating the RJ45 ends, which is just a case of matching the colours into the correct order. Then I need to drill in and secure the base to the wall. Once I've done that, I need to remember to put on the waterproof gland that goes over the camera. There's an O-ring that also needs to go over the connection to the camera as well. Finally, just feed all the excess cable back into the base and then secure the camera to the backing plate using the T10 or T20 Torx bit. It's a good idea at this point to position the camera where you think it needs to go. About 9 out of 10 times we tend to be bob on with where the camera needs to be pointing, which saves us a load of faff moving our ladders back round to adjust the cameras when we've all terminated in the loft. Now Jack's going to mount the remainder of the cameras externally while I jump up into the loft and start terminating the recorder side. Once the recorder's mounted, it's just a case of terminating all the ends for the cables for the cameras. I could at this point test every single cable, but I don't do. If I plug the camera in and the camera comes on, I know the cable's fine. The next step is just a case of configuring it. I configure this using our test monitor. I should also note that we had an electrician come in to do a power socket in this loft for us, but he hadn't quite arrived yet, so I just ran everything off an extension lead. The final job is to join the app to the customer's phone. You do this by scanning the QR code that's generated on the screen. And once the customer's happy that everything's signed off, we tidy up, replace the hatches and pack the van. So there we have it. 4 CCTV cameras professionally fitted, as easy as that. I hope you've enjoyed the video today. If you have, please hit that like and subscribe button, it helps grow the channel. If you enjoy this type of content, drop a comment below and I'll catch you in the next one.